Alrighty. Well, hello and welcome to the Bringing the Farm to School Agriculture Producers Training for the Northeastern Regional Facilitators Workshop. My name is Tomas Delgado, Program Manager with the National Farm to School Network, and I'm coming to you from Central Illinois. I'm super excited to spend the next 4 days with you all, exploring the ins and outs of farms to school. So we have a great setup of great material for you to share this week, including engaging activities to jump into, and several guest speakers with us this week. I'll be hosting the workshop this week along with my project partner, Tammy Howard of National Center for Appropriate Technology. Take it away, Tammy.
Thanks, Tomas. I want to thank you all for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us this week. And we recognize that we're asking a lot from you for 16 hours of content over the next 4 days. But just so you know, we're here to strengthen the farm to school movement and increase opportunities for producers by boosting producers' capacity to sell to school markets through this train the trainer approach. And this project capitalizes on the knowledge and strong partnerships of the USDA Food and Nutrition Service, the National Center for Appropriate Technology, and the National Farm to School Network. So my name is Tammy Howard, and I'm from the National Center for Appropriate Technology, and I'm joining you today from Montana. I'm the project manager for this project, and I'm excited to share the curriculum that NCAT, the National Farm to School Network, and the Office of Community Food Systems have worked on together to help you conduct farm to school producer trainings in your state. You will get to know several other NCAT staff over the next few days. From NCAT, you will get to meet specialist Robert Maggiani from Texas tomorrow, and Margot Hale and Andy Pressman from New Hampshire will be joining you on Wednesday, as well as Lee Reinhardt. They will be presenting on pieces of the curriculum throughout the week. We're also happy to have Carlos Vences, based out of Arkansas, be our tech support today, our Zoom master and DJ throughout the week. And we have Mike Lewis from Kentucky and Chris Lent from Pennsylvania, and they will be helping out with facilitation in the breakout session. So some of you will be really getting to know those folks today and throughout the week. A lot of these folks have helped with this project from the very beginning, and we're so thankful and proud of their contributions. Just a little bit about NCAT. The National Center for Appropriate Technology is a national not-for-profit organization whose mission is to help people build resilient communities through local and sustainable solutions that reduce poverty, strengthen self-reliance and resilience, and protect natural resources. Much of NCAT's work focuses on building sustainable farming and food systems throughout the US. NCAT is actually based in Montana, but we have several regional offices throughout the country. And we'd like to start by recognizing the project partners on this call, in addition to our staff from the National Center for Appropriate Technology. You'll also see folks from the USDA Food and Nutrition Service Office of Community Food Systems, and 2 staff members from the National Farm to School Network, zooming in from all across the country. And with that, I'm going to pass it on to Tomas to talk a bit about the National Farm to School Network and their role in this project.
Thanks, Tammy. And for those of you who just joined, my name is Tomas Delgado, Program Manager with the National Farm to School Network. And I'd like to just take a moment to recognize the team at NFSN for all their hard work to make this project come to life. I'd like to recognize Jenny Lee Harris and Lacey Stephens for their work they've done in building the curriculum. And I'd also like to give a shout out to Anna Millen for her work around branding and communication. And again, thank you to our partners at NCAT. The National Farm to School Network has a vision of a strong and just food system for all. And we seek deep transformation towards this vision through farm to school, the way kids eat, grow, and learn about food in schools and early care education settings. As the national leader for farm to school and farm to EC movement, National Farm to School Network advocates for policy and systems design and change, and as well as facilitates networking opportunities and offers professional development and resources for food system leaders. Our network includes partner organizations across all 50 states, Washington, D.C., the U.S. territories, and sovereign nations. an advisory board, as well as national staff and tens of thousands of farm to school and ECE supporters around the country. You'll have the opportunity to get to know many of these partners over the course of the next 3 days. And on that note, I'd like to turn it over to Cybele Van Antwerp, the Farm to School Regional Lead for the Northeast Regional Office of Food and Nutrition Services.
Thank you, Tomas and Tammy, and welcome everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Cybele Van Antwerp, and I'm the Farm to School Regional Lead based in Boston for the Northeast Regional Office of the USDA Food and Nutrition Service Office of Community Food Systems. Just a very long name. So our first sort of question is, what is the USDA FNS Office of Community Food Systems, which we commonly refer to as OCFS? So to provide some high-level context, the USDA FNS Office of Community Food Systems is focused on advancing farm-to-school efforts at the USDA, with a specific focus on supporting child nutrition program operators and incorporating local foods into the National School Lunch Program and its associated programs. And to accomplish this, we have our Farm to School Grant Program, and we also provide training and technical assistance to school districts, nonprofits, state agencies, and of course, agricultural producers. Next slide. And why is this project important to OCFS? This project connects directly to the USDA FNS mission to increase food security and reduce hunger by providing children and low-income people access to food, a healthful diet, and nutrition education in a way that supports American agriculture and inspires public confidence. And in addition, farm-to-school initiatives can provide long-term revenues for producers, which boosts local and regional economies and helps create and sustain jobs. So this training is a long time in the making, and we've really always sought to be the connector that advocates for farmers and makes sure that our child nutrition programs serve children healthy, locally sourced products while supporting agricultural producers from across the Northeast region. Next slide. And the main purpose of what we're doing today is to strengthen the farm to school movement and increase opportunities for producers in the Northeast by boosting their capacity to sell to school markets through the train the trainer approach, as Tammy mentioned. The idea is to give all of you the knowledge and skills so that you can work with farmers in your states so that they can access farm to school farm kits, understand ways to navigate local markets, and also learn tangible skills to help grow their own businesses, and see farm to school as a viable market channel for that work. And again, too, as Tammy mentioned, this project really capitalizes on the knowledge and strong partnerships of the USDA Food and Nutrition Service, the National Center for Appropriate Technology, and the National Farm to School Network. Next slide. We really thank you for joining us today and throughout this week, and appreciate you bringing your expertise to support producers and strengthening their capacity to sell to schools. It's really wonderful that you're all here to build your teams and connect with one another to ensure that our agricultural producers are connecting to schools and growing their businesses through local foods. I'm really looking forward to being here with you all this week and seeing how you collaborate and move forward. Next slide. And back to you, Tomas. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we'd also like to acknowledge the Project Advisory Council that met monthly during the curriculum development phase, offering thought partnership, feedback on curriculum, and have continued to offer their expertise throughout the workshop planning phase and in the grounding of the program for best practices for working with and training producers. We'd like to extend a thanks to all of them for their dedication and contributions throughout the entirety of this project.
So let's learn a little bit more about who's joining us as attendees this week. So based on the information shared during registration, we have attendees from across the Food and Nutrition Services Northeastern region. And you can see a map of that region here on your screen right now. And so we have attendees from across the Northeast, and you can see a breakdown of attendees by state. I'm telling you, when I was doing this, I was getting my a geography refresher today. So we have 2 folks joining us from Connecticut, 6 from Massachusetts, 6 from Maine, 5 from New Hampshire, and then we have 17 folks joining us from New York, and then 3 from Rhode Island, and 1 from Montana, 1 from Vermont, and 1 from the Virgin Islands. And here's a breakdown of participants by type of organization. So we have 13 of our participants from University Extension Services, 10 are from state agencies, 14 of our participants today are from nonprofits, including producer support organizations, and 3 that have selected other, which include folks from partnerships and the national level USDA staff. So we're excited to have all of you here, and it's just a really great balanced group this week. And we thank you for your support and participation this week.
Thanks, Tammy. The goals for the Regional Facilitators Workshop is really just to bring together representatives and state agencies, extension offices, and producer support organizations that are interested in training producers and selling to schools in their respective states, ultimately to form their own state training team. Exploring bringing the farm to school training materials and providing an overview of the module content is another goal. And in addition to that, developing an action plan for each state training team to use as the blueprint for their local producer training in their state is another goal. We'd like to follow that up by learning from producers and as well as producers who are seasoned in farm to school sales, and providing opportunities for state training teams to work together in small breakout groups with the support of NCAN and NFSN as you begin to plan your own local producer trainings.
So most of you have received an agenda in the packet that was FedEx to you. I understand there's been a few little mishaps, but considering we have over 45 folks registered, that we did pretty good in getting your stuff to you this week. But I have also placed a link in the chat for the participant pack, and that agenda is also in there as well. So the agenda over the next 4 days is designed to reflect the workshop goals, which Tomas was just telling you about. And we want to keep you engaged, and so you can see there's plenty of opportunities to interact with the project content, with each other, and with your state partners. So today we're going to be spending some time introducing the training program and the trainer's toolkit content. In the second half of today's workshop, we'll have a virtual site visit featuring our friends and colleagues from Common Ground Farm in Dutchess County, New York. And then on days 2 and 3, we'll be focusing on the producer training curriculum content. And you'll gain a better understanding of that content and that you'll be delivering to producers. And there will be ongoing opportunities for you to work with your state teams. On day 4, we'll feature a panel of buyers and producers engaged in school sales from Food Connects, based out of Vermont, and Joe Kozowski from Lakeside Organic, based out of Hadley, Massachusetts. We'll also spend some time with the planning and outreach guide, and you and your team will be able to go through that and start planning your producer trainings. And then we'll discuss a little bit about the producer evaluation process. Tomas? Thanks.
So we'd like to acknowledge that the COVID-19 pandemic in particular has brought a new level of complexity to farm to school, as well as to providing trainings and working with producers. We have spent the last 6 months adapting content and training approaches to meet the needs of the current situation. We understand that this is not the ideal format to be conducting this type of training, but we've seen so much incredible and resilient innovation from you all during this time. So we just know that the work must continue. We have built in a lot of opportunities to interact throughout the workshop, as well as daily 15-minute breaks with addition to 5-minute breaks here and there. Even so, we know virtual trainings can be challenging, so please feel free to step away and take care of yourself as needed. And lastly, one major adaptation, of course, is the virtual platform that we're using today. So on that note, I'd like to turn it over to Carlos Vinces to help us get to know our virtual training technology.
Hi everyone, my name is Carlos Vences and I'm the project assistant at ANCAT. And this week I'll be taking care of the background components of Zoom and providing technical assistance for this workshop. So let's go over a quick Zoom overview. So firstly, if you haven't done so already, remember to rename yourself. Do that by clicking the arrow in your individual Zoom box and selecting rename. So please add your name, state, organization, and pronouns if you'd like. We strongly encourage you to access the meeting via video versus just calling in, and to have your video on so we can see each other and increase interaction. This is especially helpful in breakout conversations. But if you must, you can call in for some of the meeting. And on that note, if you're on video, but also using your phone for audio, we ask that you make sure you enter your participant ID when joining on your phone. This syncs your video with your phone number, so we don't. It doesn't look like we have two separate participants in the meeting. This is also important for breakout groups. You can find this participant ID number by clicking on the meeting info or a green check mark icon in the top left of your Zoom screen. We also ask that you please mute yourself when not speaking to avoid background noise and feedback. So we'll also be using a few different functions within Zoom during this meeting. So I want you to be familiar with those. We have closed captioning as an option during this meeting. So on the bottom of your panel, you should see live transcript, and you can either show subtitles or hide subtitles as desired. If you choose view full transcript, you'll be able to see the full transcript in real time to the right of your screen, like a chat box. If you have any trouble with this, please let us know in the chat. For different views, you can change the screen view in the top right of your screen to see side by side with the shared screen on either gallery view or speaker view. So if you want to see more people, you can hover over the space between the slides and faces. A line will pop up and you can slide to see more folks. Our chat function, if you haven't already done so, go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat, name and organization. Feel free to use the chat for any questions you have that you don't want to hold for designated Q&A times, or if you don't plan to verbalize a comment or question later. We will be responding to any questions we can that have short answers within the chat, and questions that are directed towards specific speakers or topics will be held until Q&A times, unless the speaker indicates that interruptions are okay. We have the raising hand function. So on the bottom panel, click reactions, and you should see the raise hand function. Raise your hand to be called on for Q&A times, and please don't use this function during presentation. We like for you to use the chat instead. We'd also like to notify you that your participation is considered consent to record main room sessions. So if this is a concern, please connect with me or Lacey in the chat. For breakout groups, there are several points during the next 4 days that you'll be sent to various breakout rooms. You'll be pre-assigned by state. So all you have to do is click the join room when it pops up on your screen, and you're always able to leave the breakout room and return to the main room. But unless you have an issue that needs addressing, we encourage you to stay in the breakout room until you see the pop-up asking you to return, or until the breakout group is done with their activity. The host can send chat to other rooms, but at once, but otherwise the chats become individual group chats, and you can use them within your group. Well, we will be doing several live polls in the meeting, so you should see a pop-up on your window where you can take the poll. Please engage in the polls, and we won't close them until we have 100% participation. Also, I'd like to add that we will be having some friendly competition throughout the duration of the workshop. So we will be awarding points to each state team for correctly answering questions. And at the end of this workshop, we will proportionally tally up the points for each team, and those with the highest score will receive a prize in the form of an Etsy gift card. So lastly, please reach out to me via the chat function, or you can text me. I'll put my phone number up in the chat. And if you have any tech issues during the training, this information is also in the participant and presenter home-based documents if you need. Thank you, and I'm looking forward to a great couple of days together.
Thanks for that, Carlos. I'm going to jump in and share a few more tools that we'll be using over the next 4 days together to help get you engaged. Hopefully help us make this a really smooth and exciting time to be together. I'm Lacey Stevens. I'm a senior program manager with the National Farm to School Network. And I'm here to support the groups over the next 4 days and help facilitate some of the breakout sessions as well. So some of the tools that we want to make sure that you're really familiar with and be able to utilize over the next 4 days. The first is the participant home base. And we'll put the link to this in the chat box. Hopefully you've already received a link as well and have maybe taken some time to take a look. But we know that there's a lot of information and resources that we'll be sharing with you, a lot of links, a lot of different tools, a lot of places to be, both virtually and online, as well as with the tools that you have in your hands. So we wanted this home base to be that one place that you know you can always go to kind of come back to all of the resources and have access to all of those pieces in one place. So in that participant home base, you will have the full agenda. In case we need to make some minor adjustments, we'll make sure that that agenda is updated. We have contact information, just as Carlos said, if you need to contact him about tech questions, if you need to contact Tammy or Tomas or myself about any questions about your group or about what's going to be happening over the next 3 or 4 days, our information is there to be able to connect with us. You also have important links to all of the resources that we'll be referencing in their virtual formats in case you want to look at those both virtually or if you haven't received your hard copies yet as well. We also have on there links to your team Jamboards, which we'll be talking about a little bit more. But those are the spaces that your teams or your state groups will be working together. And we have got links of those in that document as well. So this is your go-to place over the next 3 days. If you get disoriented, if you're not sure how to find something or who to connect with, this is the place to go. So speaking of Jamboards, I wanted to just take a few minutes to orient folks to this tool that we will be using to connect within your teams and within your groups. So I'm going to share and do a little demo just for folks who may not be as familiar with the tools or how to use our Jamboards. So this is just an example. Every state is going to have their own set of Jamboards that you'll be working together collaboratively through the next 3 or 4 days. So you've got 20 different boards here that all have some different prompts and different spaces for your brainstorming and responses that you'll be working with through the next 4 days. They closely align with the trainer action plan that you'll be hearing more about later. And the end goal is for you to have some really thoughtful brainstorming, collaborative work together to move you towards a potential producer training. And you'll be able to capture it all here. No one's responsible for taking notes or having to hold all of this information. You'll have one place where it's all captured. So I just want to orient you to some of the tools and the ways to use Jamboard. So again, every state will have their own Jamboard like you see here, but with your state's name at the top. You can move from Jamboard to Jamboard. So you see you have 1 through 20 up here, and these arrows will move you back and forth. So you can jump back and forth between those different Jamboards. When you're ready to add content to the Jamboard, you'll want to use these tools over here on the left-hand side. So one of our first prompts will be asking you to add a photo in our first breakout session. To do that, you'll find this add an image, looks like little mountains here. You'll click add an image and you can browse or select from these other ways to add an image. One of the tools we'll be using a lot is using the sticky note function. So that's this little square up here that looks like a sticky note and says sticky note when you scroll over it. You'll click that sticky note function when you are asked to respond to a prompt or do some brainstorming. You can type a note. You could choose a different color. Maybe different folks within your groups want to use different colors, or you want to categorize differently. Click save. You can get out of that, and then you can move these and group them together. So that's one of the best functions that you'll be using over the next few days. So those are some tools we want to make sure that you have access to. When you get into your groups, your facilitator will also make sure you feel super comfortable with how that works and that you're able to use it effectively. So we want to make sure if you have any questions, as you're thinking of potential questions, we're going to do a little test poll to make sure that you all can use the polls as well. So I'm going to put up a poll here with 2 questions. One is we want to hear from you how many producer trainings you've conducted. And then we also want to hear, when do you anticipate you might host a Bringing the Farm to School local producer training? And of course, not sure yet is a totally acceptable answer. So you should see those 2 questions pop up, and we'll give you a few minutes to respond to those questions. Starting to see a few responses come in. All right. I'm going to go ahead and end that poll and we can share what we heard from you. So how many producer trainings have folks conducted? It sounds like for a lot of people, Bringing the Farm to School might be their first producer training. We've got a few folks who've done 1 or 2, and we've got 1 pro out there who has too many to count. Our second question was around when you would anticipate potentially doing a Bringing the Farm to School local producer training in your state. Some folks are planning ahead, looking at 3 months, even 3 to 6 months. Most folks aren't quite sure yet, and that is totally fine. We're glad you're here with us to learn more about the project. So I want to leave some space if folks have any questions about what we've just shared, about the background, or about any of the tech tools or resources that we've shared so far. All right, well then I will go ahead and turn it over to Tomas.
Thanks, Lacey. Yeah, so next we'd like to just chat about a set of community group agreements and expectations for our time together. But before we do that, I'd love to just encourage you all to maybe come off mute and introduce yourselves. So feel free to share the state that you're coming from and the organization that you work with. So let's just take just a few moments to get to know each other. So yeah, any volunteers?
I'll go. I'm Becky O'Connor. I'm a Farm to Institution Coordinator in Western New York.
Nice to meet you, Becky.
Hi, I'm Emily Cook. I'm with the Department of Agriculture and Markets in New York. And one of the programs I manage is Farm to School.
Excellent. Great to have you, Emily.
Hi, everyone. I am Blair Tucker-Ruchala, and I work for the USDA Food and Nutrition Service National Office, and I work in the Food Distribution Division.
Excellent. Thank you.
Hey, this is Janessa Dudka-Gianelli. I am a researcher with University of Massachusetts Amherst, and I work with seafood. So it'll be seafood to school or fish to school.
Excellent. So good to have you.
Hi, I'm Kevin Dawson from the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. I'm the Farm to School Coordinator.
Thanks, Kevin.
Good afternoon. I am Belinda Sanderson, the State Director of the Virgin Islands Special Nutrition Program.
Thank you so much for joining us, Belinda.
Hi, my name is Christy Apostolidis. I'm the Farm to School Coordinator for the Lower Hudson Valley in New York. And I work with a lot of farmers in the Orange County area through the Ag and Farmland Protection Board.
Thank you.
And I'm Katie Sheehan Lopez. I'm the Regional Farm to School Coordinator for the Upper Hudson Valley. And I work closely with Christy.
Hi, everyone. I'm Stephanie Hsu. I work for American Farmland Trust, and I'm also from the Hudson Valley, but we work statewide. So we also work in Farm Institution and Farm to School.
Great to have you, Stephanie.
I can go next because I'm also a Stephanie, Stephanie Bush from Rhode Island. I work for Farm Fresh Rhode Island, which is a local food support organization, and I help to coordinate our farm to school activities.
Excellent.
I can go. My name is Shannon Rader Ginsburg. I work with Yukon Extension, Put Local on Your Tray, and we do various farm to school activities throughout the state.
I am Stacy Purslow with the New Hampshire Farm to School program based out of the University of New Hampshire. And New Hampshire Farm to School is a statewide program.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Renee Page from Healthy Communities of the Capital Area in Maine, and we are home to the Maine Farm to School Network and Maine Farm Institution. Hello, all my Northeast friends out there. I wish we were in person today, but it is what it is.
Hi, I'm Alexis Dwyer. I'm from the New Hampshire Department of Education with the Child Nutrition Programs, and part of my work is with Farm to School.
Hi, I'm Jamie Lockman. I'm the Montana representative. Thanks for having me. I'm with Organic Montana and the Montana Organic Association. We represent organic farmers in Montana, and we would love to have more participate in Farm to School.
For joining, Jamie.
Hey y'all, I'm Serena from the Connecticut Department of Agriculture. I work with Shannon at UConn, and yeah, just looking forward to hearing all that you have to teach us and share from everyone.
Hi, I'm David Weber from the Massachusetts Department of Agricultural Resources.
Nice to have you, David.
Hi, everyone. I'm Cheryl Walensky with Cornell Cooperative Extension Harvest New York. I serve as the program lead for the New York Regional Coordinator Program and an Ag Economic Development Specialist for the state.
I can follow Cheryl. I'm Callie DeMarco. I'm with Cornell Cooperative Extension as well, up in the Adirondacks in New York, and I'm a farm to school coordinator.
Thank you.
I'm Hannah, and I'm also with Cornell. I'm in Washington County, and yeah.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mo. I'm in the Finger Lakes area of New York State, again with Cornell Cooperative Extension. The big red mafia is in the house. I'm also a farmer. I have a beef and turkey and a heritage animal farm.
Thanks for joining. All right. Well, it's great to be with such a lot of engaging folks here. So really looking forward to these next few days with you all to learn more about each and every one of you and the work that you do. So on that note, for this project, we wanted to come up with a set of community agreements and expectations to best facilitate a community and culture of respect, openness, and learning. So we just ask that you, as you all continue on with this during this week, you agree to this set of community agreements listed here. And although community agreements should ideally be co-constructed, we just wanted to present a few examples here for you to guide all of your interactions with each other with. So up top, we want to just acknowledge gender, race, and class, heading over to power dynamics in the room, as well as differences in farm size and experience level among producers, as well as facilitators and all folks who are joining us here today. Second note is just one voice at a time. Take space, make space. Avoid industry language. So if you are going to use any kind of terminology that's a bit more technical, just bring it with some definitions so everyone can have access to it. No one knows everything, but together we know a lot. Stay mentally and physically present. And then if you're able to, please turn on cameras if you are able to, and come off mute to share So if there are any other agreements that you see that are not included here, feel free to utilize the chat and share them there. But yeah, just wanted to point you the direction of the participant home base where all these group agreements can be found. And if there are any that you like to uplift or make additions to, just go ahead and add them to the chat now. But I'm going to go ahead and pass it to Lacey just to talk about our breakout sessions as we flow into the rest of the week.
Thanks, Tomas. Yeah, we're getting ready to go into our first breakout session, which from feedback we hear is, I mean, we're great speakers, but it's probably the funnest part of the time. So in our first breakout session, Carlos is working behind the scenes to get everybody in their rooms. And when he pushes the magic button, you'll get a little screen that says join, and you will be whisked away to your state groups. If you end up in the wrong place, just come back to the main room and we'll make sure we get you in the right place. Don't leave the meeting. You know, sometimes you see those two buttons that are either leave room or leave meeting. Just make sure that you leave the room and come back to the main space. So as we go into this first breakout session, I just wanted to provide some context about how these breakout sessions are going to flow and the purpose of these breakout sessions over the course of the next 4 days. So the purpose of these breakouts are for you to have that time to connect with others who in your state who are also interested in hosting or bringing this content to your state. Whether that's for bringing the farm to school specific training or integrating some of this content into other work that you're already doing. So as we move through the next 4 days, we do want to acknowledge that states are going to be in different places in these conversations and maybe in different places with their goals on how they want to use these resources. As I said, we know some of you are already thinking ahead of when are we going to have this independent training that uses all of these tools together. And some of you may just be here to learn about what is available and how you can bring it to your work. So we hope that we have made these breakout sessions flexible enough that everyone can find some benefit in the conversations that you can have with your state groups. So you will have a facilitator from NCAT or NFSN to help walk you through some of those Jamboard prompts and questions. So if you're taking a look at the Jamboard, you can see how they're structured. They each have kind of prompt questions and tell you kind of what day and how long you'll be spending on those questions together. And you'll have an NCAT or NFSN facilitator there kind of helping walk you through. We'll have about 2 breakouts per day. And your facilitators will join you as long as you want them to. If you find that your state is really rocking and rolling, you've got somebody kind of stepping up who's already kind of planning and leading, you can, that facilitator can step away and let you guys do your work. But we're also here to support you in any ways that is helpful to you. I also, before we break out, just want to mention that we know that the groups are very different sizes and they may be working through some of these questions at different paces. So there is additional time kind of built in at the end of days and after a couple of days that you can go back to some questions that you maybe didn't get to explore as much as you wanted to. So there's just space for the groups to move at the pace that you want to move at. So don't feel pressure to answer every question, get through every response every time you go into your breakout rooms. So for our first breakout room, we are going to work on getting to know one another a little bit. So I think we're going to spend about the next 20 minutes in those groups, and we'll be working through prompts on Jamboards 1 through 3. So I think that we are ready to head out. Oh, the last thing I'll mention is that we do have, again, friends and folks from OCFS, and they may be jumping in to say hello and kind of listen and connect with your group a little bit too. So don't be surprised if you might see some extra folks in your group with you. All right, I think we're ready to go, Carlos.
Alrighty, welcome back, folks. So as we move forward with our day, we hope to answer the question of why the Bringing the Farm to School training program was designed. And to touch on that, the Farm to School movement up to this point has been very strong on educating students and food service personnel on the triple bottom line. Because of this, there's relatively high demand for local products on school menus. And while there are very strong farm to school programs that have great producer tools, there are still relatively few opportunities and resources for producers to be trained in accessing school markets. So one of the goals of this project is to elevate the amazing tools that perhaps many of you have created and create new ones, as well as identify where gaps exist and to provide a comprehensive curriculum for state agency folks and farm to school leaders to use to really help producers in their capacity to sell to schools. So this the trainer project, NCAT and NFSN have worked with the OCFS division to develop a comprehensive curriculum for trainers to use in helping producers access school markets in their states. This week is the 5th of 7 regional workshops we are hosting throughout the United States, and we hope that each state team in the Northeast will leave with an action plan of your own to use in planning and preparing for your own local producer training within your state. Next slide. So we are currently in phase 3 of this project. The needs assessment has been completed, and Carolyn, one of our evaluators at New York University, will be sharing the findings from that needs assessment next. But based off of the findings of the needs assessment, our curriculum team developed the curriculum that you all received in the mail. And we'd like to just allow you to access that right now. I'm actually going to give you a link to access it digitally in the chat. One moment.
Oh, I did that already.
Oh,
too.
great. Excellent.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you.
I got your back.
Yeah. All right. So if you did not receive it in the mail, if you don't have access to it right now, please go ahead and click that link and you'll be able to follow along digitally. So we'll be digging into the curriculum and training tools throughout the next few days. And since the national pilot we hosted in September of 2020, we've been working to finalize the case studies, which you can access through the website as well. And I think a link will be dropped in there for you to access those case studies as well. Next slide. So after completing this workshop, the state training teams will hold their own local producer trainings in their respective states. And our ultimate goal is that you all will have the tools, resources, and know-how after attending the regional facilitators workshop to build capacity for producers within your state. So you may notice an overlap in the timings of the regional facilitators workshop, as well as the producer trainings as well. So this is because some of the state training teams may want to conduct their own producer trainings shortly after their own workshop, this workshop, while it's fresh on your mind, and while there's sort of momentum to tap into. So we encourage each state training team to consider the production season of your producers within your state, as well as when they may be able to attend a producer training and host virtual site visits for a component to the local producer training as well. So planning a successful training will be discussed more in detail on day 4 of this workshop. You can go ahead. Thank you. So the producer curriculum is designed to be flexible and adaptive and customizable to the training opportunities in your state. On your screen, you'll see some options, and you and your team could plan a standalone training. The producer training could be added to an existing producer-focused event. You could even collaborate to incorporate the curriculum content to a similarly focused producer training event planned in your state. So we just want to emphasize that there is a lot of flexibility in presenting this, especially virtually, as well as in person. So, or possibly blending the mix of the both. So the format and agenda is also flexible. Depending on your time and capacities, you can find full samples of this agenda to help plan your training team on page 112 of your facilitator's guide. So there'll be some more information on planning and creating agendas for your trainings then. But just to touch on it briefly, the ideal recommended format is 2 full days of training with experiential components such as farm tours or producer panels or panels with school nutrition staff. Alternatively, you could plan a single day or of a truncated content training. You can also create a presentation that's a bit more concise and specific to certain producers. So if you have maybe a set of producers that you may want to target with specific content that we've given you, that could be a possibility as well. So next slide. Yeah, and there's in addition to that, there's a lot of information on funding your training in the planning and outreach guide, which will be more in-depthly covered on day 4. But we know that it's important to talk about right at the start. This graphic here that you could see, it's available as a link in your planning and outreach guide. And I know it may be a little too small to see, but I want to give you just a visual to reference the link. And I think, yes, put in the chat. Thank you. This is a great resource, and it's broken down by program user and lists many federally funded options for producer training. Funding resources are also listed on page 8 through 9 of the Planning and Outreach Guide, and this may just give you a start to thinking about ideas and how to fund bringing the farm to school producer training in your state. So think of this week as an opportunity for you to form partnerships and think about who should be involved, who's missing, and really just think about a possible, in addition to what will be presented here, some other funding opportunities to structure your own producer training in your area. Next slide. And then lastly, we just want to touch on that, we're here to help. As your state training teams start to plan your own local producer trainings, it's important to note that you won't be working in a vacuum. Our program team will be there to provide technical assistance and refer you to local resources for areas that your team may not be able to cover. We also have a host of webinars and online tools for individuals or state teams that are not able to make this particular workshop as well. So just want to make you aware of that. And yeah, a lot of we're still thinking through sort of the dynamics of technical assistance at this point, but we hope to really connect you all with other states outside of your region as well, just to learn how they're approaching this work. So I've shared a great deal of information with you so far, and just wanted to check in. Any questions on what's been presented at this point, or anything you'd like to uplift? Well, hearing and seeing none. So just to move on, we're going to transition to just a brief segment by Carolyn Dimitri of New York University about the producer needs assessment that informed this training. So
thank you so much, Tomas. I appreciate, also I like to hear the little updates of how things are going, since, you've got this whole thing going with the training. I am going to talk a little bit about some background work that I did with my colleague, Lydia Oberholzer, in developing the producer needs assessment. So next slide, please. And so the basic goal of this work was to try to understand what farmers needed, and then this information was used by NCAT and the Farm to School Network in developing the curriculum training that you're taking right now. And so in order to understand the farmer needs, Lydia and I did 4 basic tasks. We looked at existing data sets that other researchers had collected. We read through the peer-reviewed and grade literature, and we conducted a small number of interviews with stakeholders in August and September of 2019, pre-pandemic, when the world was different. And we received feedback from the Project Advisory Council that we used to incorporate into the needs assessment. Next slide, please. So the first thing that became very apparent to us when we were doing this work was that there was a tremendous interest in helping farmers sell their agricultural products to schools. But at the same time, while there was interest, farmers were unsure how to go about this, and they were looking for support in being able to do this more efficiently, and also just understanding how to do it. And the big thing that we got out of this is that people had this general interest and thought this would be a great thing to do, but really just didn't know how to do it. Like just the nuts and bolts of how you just start the process and complete the process. Next slide, please. I think we were surprised and pleased to see that one of the most important reasons that farmers gave for participating in the farm to school channels was related to social factors. They saw this as a really important way to build relationships with their communities, to provide healthy food to the children, and also to raise public awareness about food and agriculture. I mean, as you know, these are really important factors for most farmers that are involved in local and regional agriculture in general. So it was really nice to see farmers like extending this and bringing this a little bit deeper to children for the farm to school channels. And they had from a business perspective, because of course, you know, if the farming operation doesn't work economically, the whole farm to school channel won't really work. So farmers saw farm to school channels as a way to diversify their businesses. And they saw this as a channel with low distribution costs, and that this market channel had stable and fair prices, which are all important factors to farmers. The next slide, please. But that said, there were many obstacles mentioned. And most of the obstacles were related to markets. And it's kind of interesting because what farmers reported, one thing was that they saw low prices as being an obstacle, but you know, we saw on the previous slide that other farmers saw this was a way to get stable and fair prices. So I think that's just a signal that there's a lot of misinformation and that farmers can really benefit from more information that will help them with their decision making. Farmers also said that it was hard for them to meet the volume requirements for schools. Like some farmers had too much and other farmers didn't have enough. And this was an important obstacle to be overcome. And then food safety and third-party certification. Those requirements were also viewed as obstacles. And I guess we can just go on to the next slide, since you can just probably already read those quotes that I had up there. And then the other obstacles that were identified were related to the actual transaction. Farmers didn't know how to bid or navigate the procurement process. They didn't know how to develop these relationships with the buyers and like how to find the buyers and just how to just keep the relationship going so that they knew how to meet the needs of the schools. And they just lacked information about what the schools wanted and what the schools needed. And also importantly, they did not understand how the payment system worked, that it was, you know, a little bit more bureaucratic, and this was something that they wanted to know in advance. And some school districts have farm to school coordinators, and I think farmers said, well, in those districts, it's a little bit easier to make the connection and develop the channels. But if their district didn't have a farm to school coordinator, it kind of leaves them up in the air, like who do they contact to make this work? Okay, next slide, please. I think you have to go back one to the logistics. There we go. And then in terms of logistics, farmers didn't know like where would the food be stored, because schools can't cook and farms have raw product. And it's like, how does that work? Where will the food be stored? How will it be transported? And how do the farmers need to package it? And so schools typically want like lightly processed foods, and farmers don't have lightly processed foods. So the question is like, how do you get it diced so it meets the school's needs? And how do you actually just navigate the logistical process of getting the food from the farm to the school? And then again, how to package and process the products. Okay, next slide, please. So based upon our findings, we came up with some recommendations for the content, and that the content really needed to convey information on pricing, procurement, how do those transactions work, what are the requirements of the vendors and marketing, and how do the logistics and transportation work? So these were like the broad buckets of areas where farmers would need information to make the farm to school channel work for them. And then we thought a decision tree that would help farmers work through the decision, do I sell directly to a school or do I sell through an intermediary or some kind of food hub? And also to highlight the community benefits, since it's something that farmers value, it's helpful to remind them that the farm to school channel has these community benefits, and that giving case studies and webinars for people to use like during the training and after the training would be really helpful. Next slide, please. And so the recommendations we had for the delivery of the curriculum was first is to set reasonable expectations to farmers about the potential of farm to school markets. Farm to school could be great for some farmers, but it may not work for every farmer, probably won't work for every farmer. And one important outcome of this particular training should be a farmer will be able to make a decision at the end, like, yes, I should go into farm to school, or no, I shouldn't go into farm to school. The differences, because of agricultural differences around the country, this curriculum needs to identify regional differences so that it isn't really just like a one-size-fits-all training. And the teams should have people that are experienced in food service, who understand child nutrition, and also know how to work with farmers. And that would really give potential participants a lot of knowledge about the whole broad aspect of the farm to school channel, not just one angle. And that if there would be a way to mentor experienced farm to school producers with beginning farm to school producers, this might really help both groups develop their businesses. And then experiential learning, such as farm trips and role playing, when that's possible again, would really round out the curriculum. And again, as we said before, webinars and written materials for a future review. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, what we found is there was a lot of enthusiasm for the curriculum, and that it is actually really important to provide producers with knowledge and skills so they can make an informed decision about entering the farm to school market, and that the curriculum and the training should increase the likelihood of farmer success. And I believe that NCAT and the Farm to School Network have taken all of these needs and transformed them and packaged them into a really nice curriculum that I think people are learning a lot from, and hopefully we'll have more local food in our schools. So thank you. I don't know if anyone has any questions. Usually no one does, but I'll take that as a no. Okay, thanks everyone.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. And I just wanted to point out, as Carolyn said, we did aim to translate the feedback from this report. And in your folder, as Tammy has put in the chat box, in the project background on page 5, you'll find a needs assessment outcomes report that can help you see kind of specifically how this feedback has been incorporated and translated into the curriculum itself. So if there's something that you saw, you think that you would particularly want to uplift in a training that you do, a challenge that you see in your state or community, you can look at that needs assessment outcomes report to see where it's addressed within the curriculum. So with that, we did want to get a quick poll from you all. You saw the recommendations that came from this national survey, from this national compilation of information, but we want to hear from you what you're seeing about what are the highest needs for producers that you see in your state or locale. So I am going to launch our poll here and ask you to select the top 3 producer trainings that you see in your state, producer training needs. So please pick your top 3 there. We've got folks chiming in. Give it another few seconds. All right, looks like we've got most folks responding. So with most folks responding, we see the training needs coming to the top from what you all are seeing: procurement processes and regulations, logistics and transportation. Looks like vendor and marketing requirements are up there as the top 3 collectively from this group. So thank you all so much for sharing. We are going to, let's see, what's next on our agenda here. I think I'll turn it over to Tammy.
Actually, I think Tomas is going to talk about the training approach.
Yeah.
And then I'll talk about the trainer's toolkit.
Thanks, Lacey, and thanks, Carolyn, for giving us that rundown on the needs assessment. So touching on the trainer approach, once we had our needs assessment findings, we wanted to make sure that the training approach was one that could be best to address the barriers and challenges named by producers in a format that would be appropriate for adult learners and engaging and useful as possible. So with this in mind, we landed on 5 elements to guide our approach. The first being farm to school for all. And what that means is to really build a capacity for agricultural producers to launch or expand efforts to market to schools. It means making sure that the training approach and curriculum is stakeholder led and informed by those who work closely with producers. With contributions from all project partners, the curriculum we developed is designed to be relevant and accessible to as many producers interested in selling to schools as possible. The second element is one size does not fit all and place-based approaching. So while the overarching goal is farm to school for all, we know that farm to school looks different by region, sector, scale, and community, among so many other things. So the curriculum is rooted in a foundational core concept list. So selling to schools identified through the needs assessment as well as our project partners, and with the flexibility of customizing by region and locale to ensure that the program is grounded in places where producer trainings will occur. We have identified opportunities throughout the curriculum to elevate local and regional models and solutions through experiential educational opportunities such as site visits as well as case studies, many of which are still being developed. So in addition to that, local producer spotlights are just some to name a few. The next element is a third or peer learning. So that element is basically both the curriculum and overall training program includes opportunities for peer learning and peer-led experiences such as panels, facilitated group discussions with seasoned producers, and built-in networking and collaboration opportunities. Our last element is action planning. So the structural common thread you'll see throughout the curriculum is the concept of action planning. And the goal of the local producer training is that producers will leave with an action plan included, which includes their outlined long-term goals as well as short-term strategies and next steps for adapting their business plan and pursuing school buyers within it. So additionally, state level trainers will be equipped with a trainer action plan, which is a tool used to help trainers plan and deliver trainings to producers. So you'll hear more about this action planning concept as we move along later today. But on this note, I'm going to pass it to Tammy to talk a bit more about the trainer toolkit.
Cool. Thanks, Tomas. Yes, so I'm going to talk about the trainer's toolkit, and I hope some of the background information that you all have received thus far has helped frame how and why we've developed these resources. We've referenced some of these resources today and will continue to do so throughout the training. So let's start to dig into these tools so you can familiarize yourself with the scope of materials that are available to help you conduct successful producer trainings. So we use the trainer's toolkit basically to reference all of the training tools and materials that are available to help state training teams work with producers in their states. And today we're just giving you a high-level overview of those resources that you have at your disposal as trainers. But keep in mind that we will be digging into these materials in more detail over the next 3 days. So the trainer's toolkit is essentially divided into 4 buckets, which you can see outlined on your screen. And hopefully most of you have received a hard copy of most of the materials in the mail, except for that last bucket, which includes all of the online tools, including the entire toolkit, plus some bonus materials such as those case studies. The facilitator guide is the facilitator facing resource, and basically what you all will be referencing to help you conduct the local producer trainings. The producer workbook is for you folks as trainers to hand out to producers at your local producer workshop. And then finally, that planning and outreach guide is tools that you yourself or other trainer organizers can use to plan and do outreach for those local producer trainings. The case studies, as Carolyn had mentioned, and as part of the training approach that we're taking with this particular project, those case studies really help illustrate producers and buyers engaged in procuring local food. So we really wanted to kind of feature that peer component there. And we really wanted to focus on the needs of farmers, which were identified in the needs assessment that Carolyn just talked about earlier. So let's dig into these resources so you can become familiar with how to use them for your trainings. I'm going to pull up my facilitator guide. And I'll show it. I don't know if you all have me highlighted, but I'm going to show what it looks like in the flesh here. So hopefully everybody, I know a few people, there was some issues with FedEx, but hopefully most of you have a hard copy, but and as you can see, the screen image is showing right now on this particular slide. So I encourage those of you that do have a hard copy to just follow along, and those of you that don't, Tomas has pasted the online link for you to follow along over the next several slides. So the facilitator guide will assist you in facilitating your local producer training and through the use of the curriculum that our team and our partners have developed for this project. So let's dig into some of those features for the facilitator guide. So the first section, which starts on page 1, is basically the introduction to how to be a decent facilitator. And I know a lot of you folks are really pretty seasoned at being facilitator, but just some best practices. And think of that this section of the facilitator guide is everything you need to review as a facilitator before, and then also some of the next sections will help you reference what you need to be saying throughout the local producer training. The curriculum is organized into the 4 training modules that you see on your screen. And there's also an introduction and a conclusion. So you can see the topics of those modules in the graphic on your screen, and we'll be digging into the specifics of these modules over the next few days. And like I said, that first section really just provides some background information and some tips for training producer audiences that would be good for you to review before you actually start doing your producer training. And the training principles outlined by Tomas earlier are also outlined in this section. And they're also applied throughout the facilitator guide. So section 2, which starts on page 9, of the Facilitator Guide contains the curriculum and the lesson plans for trainers. And you can see on page 9 a list of the different training modules. And if you're looking at that resource online, there's actually links to the slide decks and to the detailed curriculum outlines for each of those modules. And Lacey's going to talk about those detailed outlines, what we're calling curriculum maps, in more detail tomorrow. So each module includes these presentation slide decks that we've developed and detailed lesson plans that include talking points, facilitator prompts, and activities that you can use to help producers learn the content. I want to note here that one of the reasons we've developed the training team concept that we keep referring to is that some folks on your team may be better suited to teach certain parts of the modules or certain modules than others. So for example, extension associates might be the best at teaching modules 3 and 4, where we really dig into price point and food safety concepts for producers. And then folks more experienced with procurement might be better at teaching modules 1 and 2. So your team will have the opportunity to identify best fits and gaps over the next few days. So this section also, section 2, also includes specific guidance for each module, including a facilitator background section to help you prepare for teaching that particular topic in the module at your local producer training. So let's look at an example. If you turn to page 25, and I'm going to be turning there with you, you can see in module 1 the outline, which includes the producer learning objectives. And that's for you as a facilitator to check for understanding. And then a list of core concepts specific to that particular module. And then below the outline, you can see a list of resources that are just starting on page 25 and then go on into page 26. And that includes, this also includes a list of case studies, as well as key terms that are really specific to that particular module. So now let's turn to page 29. And I want to show you a few features of the lesson plans. So this is a really good example of the components featured in the lesson plans to support you for each slide in each module of the training. So there's a thumbnail, as you can see, there's a thumbnail right at the top left corner here of the slide from the corresponding presentation slide decks. And each slide includes those suggested talking points. And like I said, the keyword is suggested. These are intended to support, diverse teaching approaches and help you minimize reading from the slides. But you don't need to read verbatim from these talking points. The talking points are really meant to simply provide you guidance for you. And you're welcome to change those talking points in your own slide decks, because you can download those slide decks and change the talking points and even change the slides themselves. So facilitator prompts, as you can see at the bottom of slide 9 here on page 29, they really emphasize particularly important information and instruction techniques to keep the content actionable for producers. So for example, the facilitator prompt for slide 9, wants the facilitator to link this dialogue back to what you've heard in the icebreaker activity. And Lacey is going to talk about how to do that in a bit here now. And so one other thing I want to feature in slide 10 is we have regionalization tips. And we want to, we encourage you to do any kind of regional, regional examples of information that's relevant for where you're from. So we strongly encourage you to customize some of the training with those regional examples or based on a specific audience. Like I remember somebody saying they were working more with fishers. So, that would be an opportunity to have customized content based on the audience. So we'll be providing and flagging areas where you can do that throughout the next few days. So let's all turn to page 33. And I wanted to just point out here, so on slide 17 for module 1, it shows an applied activity. So there's lots of applied activities throughout this curriculum. And you can see the example on page 33 has an applied activity. It takes about 3 minutes to do. And we want you as facilitators to encourage producers to identify products that have already, that they're already producing that might actually fit into a school menu. So that's an example of just a, really quick way to keep the producer audience engaged. And so the activities are flagged, as you can see, in yellow in this guide, and the corresponding slide decks as well. And they include instructions and any kind of materials or tools you might need, and also some reflection questions that might connect the content to the producer workbook, which we'll be going over in a bit here. And in many cases, these activities are actually based on the worksheets from that producer workbook, and we'll be reviewing here next. But before we move on to the producer workbook, I just want to point out the appendices section, which starts on page 108. So let's move on over there. And before we stop in the appendices section, I want to also point out on page 105, we have a very extensive glossary of key terms. So, and we are going to be asking our facilitators, or encouraging our facilitators to create opportunities for shared language through doing kind of a Jeopardy-based activity. So we'll be talking about that more tomorrow. So on the appendices, there's lots of extra resources that you as a facilitator might want to access online, because you can see, you can type these in if you're looking at the hard copy, but it might be better to just turn to the appendices section from the online PDF. And the facilitator tools and resources are broken down by module. So as you can see in Appendix A, if you need more resources to do that particular section of the training, then you just can click on that link. For example, the benefits of farm to school is something you might want to read up on for the introduction. And the tools in Appendix A, another thing I wanted to flag is there's also guidance on planning a panel, building your training team, as well as sample agendas, which you can see on page 111. So on Appendix B, we also include a list of producer-specific resources that are referenced throughout the curriculum. So you might want to review that as well when you're starting to prepare for your training. But these are resources that are really specific to the curriculum, and the producer workbook includes way more resources that are relevant to each module. So another thing I wanted to point out is in Appendix C, we have evaluation guidance for producers, and Lydia Oberholzer will be going over that on Thursday. And that's in Appendix D. And Appendix C, I want to just go back to that, is a lot of the optional content that might not be relevant to all producers. So, and I want to point out on page 123, we're going to do a fish to school overview on Wednesday, just because we know a lot of you folks are working with fishers, or there is an opportunity to have fishers engaged in schools. So we are going to elevate that this particular in this Northeast Regional Facilitator Workshop. So yeah, finally, I just want to point out on page 139 is that trainer action plan that Tomas was just referring to, and you can access it here in your facilitator guide as a hard copy. It was also printed off in your green pocket folder. So if you want to just you don't want to have to be switching back and forth, you can just access it that way. And then of course our Jamboards incorporate lots of different components of the trainer action plan. So lots of different ways to access the trainer action plan. So that about wraps it up for our overview of the facilitator guide. And I'm going to turn over to the start looking at the producer workbook. But as we take a few minutes to grab that particular resource, I just wanted to see if there's any questions about the facilitator guide. And I'm not seeing any in the chat, but feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question about the facilitator guide before we jump into the producer workbook. All right. Well, like I said, we're going to be really digging into these in more detail in the next few days, but I definitely want to give some opportunity for folks that might have a question. Okay. Well, let's dig into the producer workbook. So we wanted the producer workbook to truly be more of a workbook. So there isn't as much text. You won't see as much text in the workbook as you do in the facilitator guide, but there are a lot of activities and worksheets for producers to work through as you go through each module. And we did organize a workbook so that it corresponds with each module. So each module includes an abbreviated outline, because we really wanted producers to have a quick glance at what topics are included. And you can see the outline for the introduction here on your screen. And it gives producers a quick glance guide at what topics are included in that section, as well as a list of resources to help them understand the concepts of that particular module. So you have the content and the learning materials, basically. So if you turn to page 10, you'll see an example of one of the producer worksheets. And each module has one, or actually, several modules have more than one worksheet. And they really correspond with the applied activities that were outlined in your lesson plans and your facilitator guide. So it's important that you as facilitators become familiar with the worksheets so that you can help producers if they have questions about the worksheets when you're doing those activities during the training. And then I also want to show on page 21, so if you turn to page 21 of the producer workbook, you'll see an example of an abbreviated version of one of the many case studies for this project. And we'll be talking about those in more detail in a minute. And we've included these abbreviated case studies in the workbook to help provide producers with the context of the practical application of the concepts that are in that particular module. So for example, this on page 21, this is for module 2, and it's really talking about how the folks at this particular farm have been working with the New Mexico Public Education Department to sell directly to them and overcoming some of the barriers. So just an example of how we're trying to elevate those practical peer-based approaches. So the appendices, let's turn over to the appendices because we have a lot of appendices in the producer workbook. So if you start on page 52, that includes some of, we're using a lot of the resources in the appendices throughout the training. And we'll be digging into these resources throughout the next few days, as I keep saying. I'm sounding like a broken record here, but one of the key resources in the appendices that producers will be using is this school business action planning guide. And I'll talk a little bit more about this tomorrow, but this is similar, kind of the counter to your training team action plan, right? And even though this key resource is part of the appendix, Appendix A, you might want to consider printing it because producers will be going back and forth between the action plan and their worksheets and the workbook throughout your producer training. And this resource is really meant to help producers organize their goals and their next steps as they move through the training that you will be giving. And our team has also developed a supplemental online training for those of you that want to help producers or dig more into how the action plan can help assist producers in reaching their goals to sell to schools. And then finally, as I mentioned, the case studies in the workbook are abbreviated, and we do have a lot of different types of case studies, which are on your screen right now. And they include producers and other supply chain leaders that are really successfully engaged in school sales. And they're in lots of they're in different formats. So we have written case studies as well as podcasts and videos, and they're live online. And we'll be sure to, we would really like for you to point producers to this very useful resource, but we also encourage you, if you have case studies in your state or region, we really encourage you to do that. So I'm going to talk about how you can access those case studies in just a minute here. And then finally, I'm just going to turn on to the planning and outreach guide, which has, I think the hard copy that you all have doesn't have the purple top, but it is the only one that is not spiral bound in your packet. And it's basically everything you as a trainer or a trainer organizer is going to need to plan, execute, and do the outreach for a local producer training. So many of the tools in this guide are actually online, and we think it's probably best accessed online. So we encourage you to, thumb through it today, but we'll go through some of those components in the hard copy, but it might be better looked at online. So let's turn to the table of contents for the planning and outreach guide. And as you can see, there's a checklist for training organizers. There's also budget templates and lots of templates to help with the outreach piece. And if you turn to page 16 through 18, you can get an idea of some of the amazing formatted materials that Anna Mullen and NCAT's graphic designer, Amy Smith, developed for trainers to use in outreach. These materials are all available online, and you can adapt them for your own local producer trainings. And like I said, because of the adaptability of this particular resource, obviously it's better accessed online. And this is a perfect segue to look at some of the online resources and the online interface of the tools that I've just described. So I'm going to switch screens, and we're going to get online here and explain how you can navigate these resources through our webpage. So hold on, I'm going to share my screen. All right, hopefully you all are seeing Bringing the Farm to School on your screen. Give me a thumbs up if you can. All right, Alexis, thank you for the thumbs up. I'm seeing thumbs up. All right, sweet. Okay, so I just want to highlight the online version of all of the resources I just went over, and then some. And I really want to thank our partners at the National Farm to School Network for hosting the Trainers Toolkit online. And so this is a landing spot for the Bringing the Farm to School Trainers Toolkit. And if you, I believe somebody put this in the chat. And so you all can navigate it on your own as well. So just, the first thing you see is this overview, right? And then next we have the happening now. So this includes a lot of the stuff that's going in phase 3, as Tomas mentioned, the different phases. So we're in those regional facilitator workshops. And this is where you can access the trainings that we're doing, the regional facilitator workshops that we're doing right now. And one thing I did want to mention about this, as we transition into state producer workshops, that is what's going to be featured in this section, in the Happening Now section. So the next feature I want to show you is basically, this is the Trainers Toolkit piece. So explore the training materials. So you see here, we have resources divided by user. So resources for facilitators, for producers, and then the case studies apply to both facilitators and producers. So if we click on this red button, that'll take you to the facilitator resources. And I'm just going to, I already have it brought up because I didn't want to have an issue with the my streaming here. So as you can see in the facilitator resources, you have access to the facilitator guide, and I'll pull that up here in a sec. But also, as I mentioned, this is where you can download those slide decks that you as a facilitator will be using to train producers. So all of the modules, including that optional content that I was mentioning, are included here. And here are some of those additional resources that we've been talking about. And that's the webinar recording of building your training team, and then using action planning with producers. And so those are some of the things you can come back to when you have a chance. And so let's look at the facilitator guide online now. And as you can see, a lot of these are the table of contents has lots of embedded links. So I'm going to click on introduction. And that'll bring you over to the introduction of the curriculum. And I wanted to point out here that you can access that slide deck. That link is embedded for that particular part of the curriculum, as well as to those digging deeper resources for that particular module. So I just wanted to point those things out. So let me get out of here. And I'm going to go over to that producer facing resource. But if you ever get lost and you just want to get back to the main page, you can click on that red link and that will bring you back to the home page. So just an FYI on that. So let's go over to those producer resources. And the producer workbook is here online, as well as that action planning guide. You know how we had mentioned, maybe you might want to print off that action planning guide, and so that you can access the link from here, as well as a compilation of all the producer worksheets. So that's another thing that you can access here. And one nice thing about the producer worksheets I want to show you is that you can if you download this particular PDF, it's fillable. So that's kind of exciting for producers. They can look at it online and do it that way as well. So let me get back to, I also want to show you some of the features of the producer workbook. So again, broken down by module. So let's go on over to module 1. And those case studies are embedded in the learning materials for producers. And I want to show you as well the digging deeper resources as so let's get over to the end of module 1. And here are the digging deeper resources that producers can use. So there's those case study videos talking about all of them that are relevant to module 1, but also resources that producers might want to get more information on. And the links are embedded here. So it's nice to encourage producers to access the producer workbook online. So one other thing I just want to point out are those case studies. So I'm going to pull those case studies up on the Bringing the Farm to School webpage. And as I mentioned, there is an opportunity to see these case studies in many different formats. So the Anthony Youth Farm, as I mentioned, that was in featured in module 2 as an abbreviated case study, but a larger, like 2-page written case study is here in the read. And then we also have a podcast featuring Alma Makatiko from Anthony Youth Farm. And let me also show you, we also have several different videos that you can watch. And we have some partner videos that our friends at National Farm to School Network have also incorporated that are very relevant to producers. So that's our case studies that will be featuring in multiple different times and opportunities throughout the training. So with that, I just want to check in. I'm going to stop sharing. And I just went over a ton of different material. And we will be going over these in lots of detail over the next couple of days. But any questions, anything coming to mind as we give you just the overview of our trainer's toolkit? feel free to put questions in the chat, or we also would love for you to unmute yourself.
I'll ask a super basic question since everyone's so quiet.
Yes, please, Alexis.
So for the producer's toolkit, is it understood that we should probably create like similar booklets like you created for us to give to them? Or are you finding that they don't want to have it and would rather have it in the digital format? I don't know if there's any ideas that you've already received feedback when researching this.
Yeah, no, that's a really great question, Alexis. And we actually almost always receive a question about the producer workbook, because the form that you all received it in is very, it's kind of polished in color with the spiral binding, and that is pretty expensive to print. But you can have a printer print it for, 5 to 10 cents a page at the most, in black and white, double-sided, and that would be much less expensive. So the way it is, available to you on the web or on our web page is in its entirety. So if you wanted to pick and choose pieces to print off, you would have to probably do that yourself, because we're not gonna just take module 1 and send it to you, because that would take a lot for every state that we're working with. So if you want to just print bits and pieces, then we encourage you to just, you can download that producer workbook and print it off as needed.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And I believe I have time. One thing I did want to point out is our planning and outreach guide on the facilitator resources. So I'm sorry, I did not go all the way down on that. So I'm just going to show you some of the features of that really quickly, because I know we're all eager to have a little break. So as you can see in the planning and outreach guide, there's lots of different topics or templates that you all can access, but I also want to just bring it up really quickly, because this is really better viewed online. So the purple phrases that you see here, you can jump to templates and resources within the documents, and the blue hyperlinks are things that are editable, and they can actually be accessed outside of the actual document. So let's just look at the budget template really quick. So this gives you an opportunity to kind of look at it in the within the document, but it's also accessible as an Excel sheet. So we definitely encourage you to check those out. And then we also have social media graphics that you can download on your onto your computer. So those are some really great features of that particular resource. So I just wanted to share those, and it escaped me. So with that, any other questions here? Let me stop sharing my screen. I think I stopped sharing that. Yeah. Okay. Maybe that gave you an opportunity to think about some other questions. All right. Well, Tomas, I think you're on for a little bit.
Thanks, Tammy. Yeah. So we have a dedicated portion for some Q&A. We have a few questions we wanted to ask you as well. But before we lead into that, just wanted to take a quick moment to really just see how you're receiving this information so far. So if you're able to, would like you to think of one word that maybe best describes your first impressions of the Bringing the Farm to School agricultural producer training so far. And then once you have a word in mind, go ahead and just share it in the chat for me. So what comes in mind? Thorough, comprehensive, great, detailed, user-friendly. Excellent. Teamwork. Very wonderful. Well, yeah, if you have any other thoughts or any other sort of feedback so far, feel free to share those in the chat. So we just provided a pretty big overview of all the curriculum and training materials. And we know there may be a lot of questions, but we will be digging into each component in more detail as we continue on with the next 3 days. For now, we just like to ask a few questions of you, just to see how you're first receiving the information, and maybe just get a sense to think about our next breakout session and some of the topics that we'll be touching on then. So I'm going to share these questions in the chat and then read them out loud as well. But yeah, so what page do the training modules start in the facilitator's guide? So these are a bit of kind of competitive questions that I'm posing here, and keep in mind that you'll earn some points for your state team as we answer these. So I'll just recite the question again and then go ahead and share your answers by coming off mute. I think the way we've done it is that if you're able to come off mute before someone else, you'll earn a point. So that should work out for us. So again, what page do the training materials or training modules start in the facilitator's guide? So does anyone have an answer for that?
Page 25.
Page 25, great. And it was Stephanie Cicero from Maine?
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you.
This is cute.
All right, next question. Where can you find the glossary in the facilitator's guide?
Page 105.
Thank you.
These are too easy, Thomas.
Yeah, they'll get tougher as we go along, so no worries.
Just kidding. I'll let someone else answer the last one.
And then where do the case studies live? Last question.
They live online, don't they? Is that true?
They do.
They live on like the NFSN website. I think Tammy put the link in way earlier on.
Yeah, 3 points for Maine.
Knocked it out of the park, man.
This will wake the other teams up.
Yeah. I know that afternoon end of day. Well, on East Coast time. I know we do have some partners from all over on the call.
Excellent. Well, great job, Maine, and thanks so much for sharing those answers. All right, well, that about does it for this portion. We're going to lead into a more extended break.
So we're going to move into the next phase of our program today. And I just wanted to mention that since we're trying to model what we want you folks to do as trainers. So as part of designing a peer-led and experiential training, we also recommend that trainers include some kind of site visit as well as panels. And we've been mentioning that throughout the training so far today. So we would like trainers to include a site visit that includes a farm that's engaged in selling to schools. So we encourage you to invite the school food authority from the school district that a farmer is selling to as well. But really encouraging you to just have some type of site visit, whether be it virtual or in person, and hopefully soon it will all be in person, right? So in an effort to model a site visit here for you, we're happy to have Erica Rincon and Sember Weinman join us today from Common Ground Farm. And obviously a virtual site visit is very different than an in-person site visit, but we've tried to do our best to help you get a glimpse of Common Ground Farm and how they're engaged in school sales and a glimpse of their educational programming. So Erica is going to kick off the site visit, but first, Erica and Sember, thank you so much for joining us today. Could you just take a few minutes to introduce yourself? And I know you have some slides to share from Common Ground Farm, and I'm gonna go ahead and do that. So while you introduce yourselves, I'll start sharing my screen.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having us. This is such an honor. I'm Sember Weinman, and I'm the Executive Director for Common Ground Farm. And I've been with Common Ground since 2011. I started out as the Education Director, and I've seen this farm kind of from the very beginning of our farm to school work. And we are very fortunate that we have been able to bring Erica Rincon on board as our farm to school coordinator.
Yep, and I'm Erica. I am the farm to school coordinator, but I actually started with Common Ground as a farmer in 2015. I had already been farming for quite a while at that point, and so it was really great to come to Common Ground and get to know the community there, the land, and just start growing food in a really meaningful way. Common Ground has a really unique, special place in the community that they serve, and so it was a really great experience. Yeah, it is a shame we are not currently all walking around the fields. It's a beautiful day outside, and I know it would be much nicer on the farm than sitting here looking at pictures of the farm, but we'll try recreate it as best we can. So I'll just start by introducing the farm kind of briefly. These first 3 slides are pretty introductory. Common Ground is located, you can go back to the one just before, is located in Southern Dutchess County in New York. So we are technically in Wappingers Falls, but we are about 10 to 15 minutes from the city of Beacon. And so we are really hyper local when it comes to serving that school district. And we're really lucky to be so closely located. Yep, next slide. So Common Ground is also, let me follow along here, was founded in 2001. And at that point, we really started as, you can see all my notes here on the side. We started as a CSA farm, but noticing at that time that the CSA market was pretty saturated, we shifted our model and we really started to step into the farm that we are today. So now we do 2 local farmers markets, again, only going right down the road to Beacon and to Newburgh. We sell a small amount of wholesale produce to local restaurants, and we have a UPIC CSA, which is the picture of the 2 ladies pulling food out of the field. And then we also set aside a large amount of the produce that we're growing for donations. So we usually donate around 10,000 pounds of vegetables a year to area food pantries and community kitchens. I think the last year I was farming there, we worked with 16 emergency food outlets. So we were really serving Beacon, Newburgh, and a few other food pantries in Wappingers and just the immediate area. But we don't generally, I always joke we can go as far as our farm truck can drive us, and that is not very far. So we are pretty local. Next slide. And our mission is to serve our community as a model for food justice and education for all people, regardless of income and ages. And our Farm to School program is really a perfect example of how we're able to do that. Okay, next slide. So we grow approximately 6 acres of diversified crops, which is pretty small. Our most popular staple items that we've been growing on the farm. Oh, can you still see?
I'm sorry, I am not doing a good job with sharing my screen. So here, I'm gonna try to do this again. So sorry, I was.
Okay, that's okay. Okay, so you can go to the next slide.
Yeah, for some reason it's just okay.
Not going.
Yeah, I'm usually pretty good at this, but for some reason it's not working with me this time. Hold on.
I can keep talking about the farm.
Yeah, just keep talking about the farm while I try to mess around with this sharing the screen.
Yeah, everyone can kind of close their eyes, go to that in the field. So we grow a lot of staple items. The most popular things that we're serving at the schools are lettuce, kale, carrots, and other easily harvested items that kids can come to the farm and take themselves. We really try and grow crops that are familiar to people, that are easily kind of incorporated into recipes. So we don't do a lot of like specialty crops like microgreens or anything that's super intensive or that might not be, you know, I think that usually those sales go towards people who are really invested in their restaurant sales or have like, you know, New York City clientele or something. But we really try and grow staple items that we know people are going to be able to enjoy. So I'll just keep going through my slides, even though you can't see any of these pictures. Is that what I should do?
Yeah, I'm sorry. For some reason, it's just not, I'm having a hard time with this one. I don't know why. So.
Amy, are you able to enable slides for me and then I could click them along? Or enable me to share my screen?
Yeah, yes, that would, I think you're a co-host, so I'm apologize for this little, I think you are a co-host, so you could share your screen.
Nice.
Yep. Okay.
So our crew, normally we have a year-round farm manager, and that is a full-time year-round position. And then we also usually will have ideally 2 full-time employees who go from the beginning of April through the end of October. And then we'll usually have at least 1 part-time employee that will come from June to September. In the past, we've also worked with organizations like Green Teens Beacon, which is a Cornell-run organization for teenagers, and we'll have teenagers who are coming to work with us through the year. It has been a major hurdle for us in recent years as the cost of living rises in the Hudson Valley and the farm is no longer able to offer housing to its field crew to be able to find people who are able to make that kind of time commitment to the farm. So it's been an ongoing issue. This is our field crew from this summer, and there they are. I believe they're planting onions in the spring. I'm not exactly sure what the crop was that they were putting in there. We'll go to the next slide. So we are not certified organic, but we do use organic practices in the field, which means we're not using any kind of sprays. We rely on cover cropping as part of our fertility plan, and cover crops are a non-cash crop that you're planting on fallow fields in order to hold the integrity of the soil and return nutrients. And here you can see that we are using Reme. This is on our early spring crops this year. So things like brassicas and greens and probably lettuce and other items that have been transplanted into the field get this light geofabric that goes over them, and that is a barrier method to having pest pressure on the crops. Next slide. And then one of the biggest changes since I've been working with the farm is mechanization. So when I first started working there, we did not have a tractor, we did not have a truck, we did not have a lot of things. We used Vermont carts to do all of our harvesting, and then we would walk things over to our processing station. So now we have a cultivating tractor that we use for the majority of bed prep. We have an implement called discs where we will go through and till the soil. Then we have another implement called a perfecta, which comes through and like preps the bed before seeding. And then what you're seeing a picture of here is our black plastic mulch layer. And that puts down the two tapes that you see are irrigation lines. And then on top of it is plastic mulch that will supposedly suppress weeds and keeps the soil a little bit warmer as well, so that you get a little bit of a boost in growing. And then, yeah, this has been a major shift in the way that we're able to grow crops on the field. And I am not personally totally sold on the black plastic, but it has helped with the weed suppression. And I also think that there is discussion right now on the farm about transitioning at least some of the fields that we're growing in into no-till beds so that we wouldn't be disturbing that soil structure as we are going through and prepping beds in the season. So that would also be kind of a paradigm shift in the way that food is being grown there. It would essentially be less disturbing to the soil so that the layers of soil and the soil structure is maintained in between crops. Okay, next slide. And then this is our processing station, which actually is original to when I first started at the farm. And as you can see, it is not anything fancy. It is just some bathtubs, and we have a water hookup, and it's enclosed to the elements, at least. So produce is carted in on the field truck and then washed and then brought over to our walk-in cooler, which is like 50 feet away. And that's where all of our processing happens throughout the course of the year. Yep. All right. And I will pass it to Sember, who's going to talk a little bit more about our programming that we've done at the farm. Do you want to just control your own slides, or do you want me to take over sharing the screen?
Yeah, if you could take over, that would actually be great. So let me stop share so Erica can share, if that's okay.
Yep. Is it?
I think you can just click on present.
Sorry, where is that?
And that it's
Oh, here it is.
up, right? Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, great. So so we've been working together with the Beacon City School District, running farm to school education programs since 2012. And just give me 1 second because I lost where my presentation went. And one of our, oh, okay, hold on 1 second. Great. So prior to the pandemic, which obviously changed a lot of things, we had a variety of different farm to school educational programs. We worked primarily with elementary school, and that was really the start of our relationship with the Beacon City School District. One of our really important programs were field trips. And this is a slide of one of our farmers showing our high tunnel to a group of students. And we had a rotation where students would, do a tour with our farmer. They'd have a field tour and then a vegetable harvest. And then they would go and work with our chef, who would do a cooking demo together with the students and a taste test. And then they would also visit with the barn animals that are managed by Stony Hill Farms. So they got like a really full, robust experience. Next slide. And this is a group of students who found a caterpillar among the carrots during their carrot harvest a couple falls ago. And you can go ahead and go to the next slide. And these are students who prepared a dish together with food that they harvested in our fields. And then we asked them for thumbs up, thumbs sideways, or thumbs down to let us know how they liked the dish. And as you can see, they liked it pretty well. Next slide. In the cafeterias, from the very beginning of our partnership with the Beacon City School District, we held a Vegetable of the Month taste tests together with our partner that is now Land to Learn. They used to be Hudson Valley Seed. And students would sample a farm to school recipe featuring the Vegetable of the Month, and then deliver feedback by putting a sticker on a poster to let us know if they liked it. And if the recipe was well received, it was added to the menu mix. So we added many recipes this way over the course of the past 9 years in trying out recipes with students. We also offered a program called Chef in the Classroom, where a chef, our chef that we work with, would visit a class, teach students about the featured vegetable, and then lead them in preparing a dish together. This really helped engage children in knowing how to cook, understanding where food comes from, understanding what's seasonal, and also having some say in what their choices are and how they feel about them. And it also helped us to collect a lot of great data on how student tastes and preferences changed as in relation to our programming. We also offered a program called that we thought of as the 5th grade mural project, which I think is pretty unique to us. We wanted to have a really kind of culmination project for the 5th graders who had done some kind of farm to school programming really since their pre-K years. So we created this program where they would visit the farm, learn about public art, and then put together and discuss their collective farm to school experience in a mural project that would be installed in their school cafeteria. We also offered professional development for food service staff, working with food service, Beacon City School District Food Service, to train and engage cafeteria workers in preparing local food and understanding its value nutritionally and educationally. And we found that these programs really helped food service staff to feel valued and heard in their really important roles within the school community, and also to kind of make those connections between all the education programs that students are receiving with what's going on in the cafeteria. In 2019, Common Ground received a USDA Farm to School grant, which allowed us to hire Erica, our Farm to School coordinator, and included funding to build a school garden at Roundabout Middle School, which grew our programming that was primarily for elementary school to reach students in the middle school as well. We were able to complete the garden project, or the creation of the garden beds, during the pandemic, and it actually became a really valuable outdoor learning space in that hybrid time where outdoor seems to be, preferable. And in 2020, students who were in the school used the garden space for outdoor as part of their environmental club as well. We grew the starts for the school garden so that they had healthy organic seedlings to plant in the garden. And during the pandemic, when schools went remote, we had to rethink how we did our programming. So one thing that we did was we worked with the Beacon City School District Food Service and our partners at Land to Learn to create a farm to school meal kit, which included a farm to school recipe, a cutting board, a child safe knife, a binder for recipes and fact sheets, a veggie peeler, and a tote bag that was designed by a middle school student. We also collaborated with our Farm to School partner, Land to Learn, to create videos that demonstrated how to make the recipe and included a clip of our farmer who talked about the vegetable in the field at the farm. This allowed us to continue our Vegetable of the Month programming to the best of our abilities in a time when we could not go into the schools. Yeah, and I guess at this point, we would be happy to answer any questions.
I think, Tammy, you wanted to show that video.
I was just going to show a quick video and then we'll do some Q&A. And I do want to mention that Simber and Erica really helped us out by doing a case study video on some of their work with the food safety communications with schools in the Beacon School District. But I just wanted to show this video, and so if I'll share my screen, and I really think this one will go better with this rather than the PowerPoint. I really apologize for the for the issues. So I will just start this video here, and we'll play this for about, I have 2 excerpts here, and we'll get that started, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. So get your questions, start thinking about questions for Simber and Erica.
Common Ground began in 2001, and we started as a CSA farm. But over time, many other farms in our area became CSAs, and as it grew in popularity, we found that we wanted to shift our focus towards our mission-based work, which is education and food access. Common Ground's education programs grew to include adult workshops, toddler programs, and a really popular summer camp, in addition to a Farm to School program that we started in 2012. Our Farm to School programming includes a Chef in the Classroom series, field.
Okay. I am so sorry. I am not sure what is going on with my computer and issues today, because I'm usually pretty much a pro at this. So were you hearing the video? Okay. Not sure what's going on. Let me try it one more time, and if not, we will just open it up, okay? So let me try one more time with my screen sharing. Do you see that? Okay. So it says that you can see my screen, but
We can now.
oh,
We
you
can see it.
Okay, I'm not really sure what was going on there. Okay, let's try this again.
The CSA farm. But over time, many other farms in our area became CSAs, and as it grew in popularity, we found that we wanted to shift our focus towards our mission-based work, which is education and food access. Common Ground's education programs grew to include adult workshops, toddler programs, and a really popular summer camp, in addition to a farm to school program that we started in 2012. Our farm to school programming includes a Chef in the Classroom series, field trips to the farm, weekly garden programs, and Vegetable of the Month taste test. In 2018, we were invited to participate in a Northeast Farm to School Institute, which allowed us to figure out how to grow our programming to reach middle school students at Roundabout Middle School. Our programming included creating a school garden that's operated by the school environmental club, student taste tests, professional development for food service staff, and tastings for our students and their families. In 2019, Common Ground became the recipient of a USDA Farm to School grant, which provided us with the funding to implement this plan, in addition to working towards the New York State 30% initiative. The 30% initiative is a New York State program that encourages school districts to procure 30% of their food from New York State. As part of this plan, we were able to hire a farm to school coordinator, Erica Rincon, who's joined us on our team to help us work with the school district. Karen Pagano began as the Beacon Food Services Director in 2012. She prioritized providing nutritious and fresh meals to students from the start. Having a food services director who's receptive to farm to school was key. Common Ground is a small farm. We currently grow on 6.5 acres. We don't have the capacity to meet most of the school district's needs, so we made a plan that was intended to showcase our partnership and programming as much as possible. In 2016, we entered into our first micro purchase agreement with the Beacon City School District, with the goal of providing produce for the Vegetable of the Month taste tests for the months that were feasible. And for us, that's May, June, September, October, and November. And to provide lettuce for salads. We chose lettuce because it is a vegetable that is consumed a lot in the cafeteria. It has a short grow time and low cost inputs. We found that adding produce sales to our farm to school partnership created greater meaning and connection. From Karen's point of view, promoting hyper-local products helped increase participation, which supported her overall purchasing power. Students saw the lettuce growing in the fields that were destined for their lunch, and we were able to ensure that students had access to the same food that they learned about through our education programs.
All right, folks. Thanks for bearing with my technical difficulties today, but I want to spend some time just doing some Q&A, but first, feel free, after all that you've heard from Simber and Erica, to unmute yourself and ask questions yourself. And while people are getting their questions on board, I just wanted to ask you folks a few questions, or you, Simber and Erica, a few questions. It sounds like you've had to make some adjustments. So what are those adjustments that you've had to make to your production system specifically related to school sales?
Yeah, so when we first started working with Karen Pagano, who's the food service director, she was able to do a site visit in lieu of GAP certification. So our school district, we found out, did not require all of their vendors to be GAP certified. So all of a sudden we were like, we're in. And, you know, we had thought that GAP was like a major barrier in the past. Turns out that she was able to do a site visit instead. So some of the things that she saw when she came that she asked us to modify were all fairly simple in that she asked that we be using an organic sanitizer solution in our wash water, and that we had previously been using these like burlap sack bags in our that were wet inside of our walk-in cooler that would hold moisture in the vegetables and kind of prevent them from getting frostbite. And she just asked that we switch to plastic sheeting. So those were simple enough. The one thing that took a lot more work, but which was something we had kind of had to do anyway, was upgrading our fencing so that we would be excluding more animals from the field. And we had had kind of a major deer infiltration problem prior to that, because we had this kind of multi-layered, multi-generations of plastic fencing up before that. And so at that point, you know, it was clear we needed to make the investment into the fencing as it is. And so we put up the fencing you saw in that video, which is a standard, you know, 12-foot deer fence, and has made a huge difference. We have not had one deer infiltrate since then. But, you know, there's always, she was like, no animals in the field. And we were like, there's still geese. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do about that. So there was some back and forth. But yeah, most of the things that she recommended we were able to do, and were very common sense anyway.
Great. Yeah, that's so great to hear that you had a flexible school food authority contact. We do have a question from Ryan, and he said, first of all, that it looks like a wonderful program that you have on your farm, but he's wondering what your or the other folks' experiences are with on-farm educational opportunities when a farm is really just strictly production oriented. In other words, not having an educational mission like you folks do, but they still want to sell to schools and engage students, because that's a really helpful thing for getting dining services folks on board.
Yeah, I could just share some of the stories I've heard from farmers who are interested. One thing that is a major barrier for us is that we don't have a great aggregation system in the area. So we're a very small farm, and we're only able at times to fulfill a portion of an order, or you know, or just not be able to fulfill something at all. And we are really lucky that we have that direct relationship with our food service director, who has just built this really great relationship with us, and we have a very fluid back and forth. For other farmers who maybe don't have that relationship already built, looking for a food hub or another method where there is a third party who's there to help make some of those connections. I think for farmers, it's especially difficult, I know, with documentation and just being able to provide all of the necessary, like labels, documenting, showing up to the farm at the right time, to the school at the right time when they're able to receive there's so many logistics at play that I think working with an organization, like I know Capital Roots has a food hub, and they pick up from farms, aggregate, label, like distribute, and that's a wonderful thing. So I would say that might be one of the starting places, or reaching out directly within their community to start building that relationship with the food service director is another way. But those always take time. And I think with everything that's been going on in the world, school food service directors are just so, no one knows what's coming at them next. So it's a difficult time to just be building relationships. But if there is a party, an entity out there that's already got those connections and you're able to start working with them to get into the schools, that might be one way to do it.
I'll just add that at least for us and with the food service directors that we've spoken to, that education component, like it feels like it does feel like kind of like a way to ease into it. So if your farm is strictly production, and that is like an age-old question we've been grappling with since we've had education programs, like how much is this a production farm and how much is this an education farm? I wonder if it might make sense to try to partner with an education-based organization that could work together with you to provide some of those educational programs so that kids are kind of primed for receiving, a more abundant, fresh produce in their cafeteria.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion, Simber. And I do want to plug our panel that we're going to be having on Thursday, because it is with a food hub that is doing some of those things that you were just describing, Erica. So, and then this might be a good question for Simber too, is somebody was wondering if Common Ground is fully a nonprofit farm, or is there a for-profit aspect to your farm? And then specifically, are your farm to school market channels dependent on grant funding or other outside funding sources?
We are a 501c3 nonprofit, but we do have a variety of funding sources. So our farm distributes to the Beacon Farmers Market, the Newburgh Farmers Market, and those are for-profit sales. We are a nonprofit, but we do sell produce. We have a lot of food access programs. And then we do also donate a lot of what we grow. And then we have like a wholesale accounts, which we consider school sales to be part of. We don't specifically have grant funding to subsidize sales to the school district. We do have grant funding for our education farm to school programs, but we also have buy-in from the school district to pay for our programming to be part of the school district. So, and then, we do receive program income from our education programs. We have a really popular summer camp, and then we run 2 markets. So it's like a big, a variety of revenue sources. And we found that has really helped us, especially this past 2 years where we had to cancel camp last year and we had to kind of rethink our how everything was operated. But we certainly do write a lot of grants and receive a lot of grant funding. And we also do receive funding from individual donors. And before 2020, we used to have events as well.
Great. Yeah, that's a great explanation of how the farm it has multiple market channels and different sources of funding. So we have one more question because of some of our unfortunate technological issues today. We're running just a little bit behind. So I'll just have this last question from Shannon. And so could you describe the process in working with the school to budget dollars toward micro purchasing? Was it difficult to figure out? Did they have any kind of challenges on allocating money for that micro purchase?
I would say it is incredibly challenging. And Tammy, I don't know if you're able to share the link to that full video, but I think one of the clips we talked about sharing, and I know we ran out of time, is that we actually began working with the PACE Law Clinic, and PACE is a local law school to us. And they were amazing in helping us to figure out all of these details. And we actually started working with Pace Law for our own purposes to ensure that we were, crossing all our T's and dotting all our I's and working with the school district in this way. And then we realized how valuable that information might be to share. So then we worked together with them to create a farm to school legal toolkit, which is available, will be available on our website. It is, and it has been, and I think just at this very moment, it's not accessible, but we'll make sure it's accessible and I can share the link as well.
Great, I'm going to share it too here in the chat. I have the link right here. So, well, thank you so much for taking the time out of your very busy schedule to join us today and share about Common Ground's farm to school programming and sales and how you've made it work on your place. Any last minute words of wisdom for our trainers and for getting into having them help producers access school sales?
I think relationship building is so key, and that has just been in many ways the key to all of our, I feel like we have a very organic relationship with our school food director, and just she has been an advocate and has definitely said no to us in the past, and has, definitely had to prioritize her own budget and all of her own her side of the situation at times. But she also is always ready, willing, and able to sit down with us and talk about ways we could keep going. So it's not always completely fluid, but as long as there is buy-in and a willingness to kind of work through the details, it feels really possible.
Yeah, thank you so much. That is sort of the theme of a lot of this programming, is the relationship building piece is super important on both levels. Well, again, thank you for your time. And I put the video of the full case study, which is about 12 minutes long, and Simber and Erica both describe their work with the Pace Law Center. And there's also a link to the Farm to School Legal Toolkit in there too. So thank you so much. And
all right, welcome back, folks. So as we move on in the day, before we go into our last breakout session, just wanted to share a bit about the introduction to the trainer action plan and just give you some of the background as to how this was developed. So go to the next slide. So we developed an action plan for trainers to help pull many of those big picture components of planning into one place. You'll be spending a lot of time with this resource throughout the workshop and in your state breakout teams. A copy of the trainer action plan is located in the worksheet folder that you all received in the mail, as well as the very end of the facilitator's guide on page 139. The purpose of the trainer action plan are twofold. One is to model the producer action planning that will occur during the local producer trainings, and two is to assist you with assessing your team's capabilities and identifying those important next steps towards planning your own local producer trainings. Next. So the first part of the trainer action plan is a team assessment, a checklist of items starting on page 139 and ending on page 140. The checklist is organized into 6 buckets. Know the content, build your training team, make it local, plan your agenda, identify and reach your audience, and plan for action. They're all aligned with the Getting Started section of the Facilitator's Guide on pages 4 through 6. The assessment is intended to support each state training team in determining potential knowledge gaps, as well as identifying familiarity with the training tools, and the overall comfort with the planning, outreach, and facilitating processes. Next. The second part of this resource includes the action plan template, where teams are encouraged to insert necessary action steps, corresponding timelines, and any other additional resources or tools needed to successfully plan and host a local producer training in your state. The filled out action plan in conjunction with the planning and outreach guide will then become your blueprint for planning and preparing your own local producer training. For each topic area, it's important to start with the team assessment statements, and knowing the content is the first step. In this example, this team has members with broad knowledge and expertise spanning from child nutrition programs and working with producers. However, the team is less familiar with how to assess and navigate the resources found in the trainer's toolkit to supplement their content knowledge and to support their training planning efforts, as you might all be feeling right now. The team then would come to an action planning table for the know the content portion. Most of the action steps for this bucket are pretty straightforward. The team will want to take some time early in the planning process to familiarize yourself with the training materials and the module content. Our goal for this workshop is to really work through those pieces and make sure each team leaves with this week, each team leaves this week with a solid understanding of what the materials are, how they work, and how to access and share them, and of course, how to use them. So of note, the Planning and Outreach Guide is an excellent tool to review in tandem with the Trainer Action Plan, as it includes a detailed checklist for planning and preparing your training teams, and it also aligns with the action plan and provides a myriad of action steps that you will likely need and you'll likely need to include in your local producer training. Throughout the week, we will support you in your state teams in working through the team assessment and action plan table. To facilitate group brainstorming and action plan development, we'll be using Jamboards, as Lacey described earlier. And again, each breakout group will have their own set of boards to work on, and they will they have aligned those Jamboards to really match up with the workshop agenda this week. So before we transition into our state teams, is there any initial questions before we go into the last Jamboard for the day? All right, well, seeing and hearing none. So we'll be going into a 10-minute breakout session with your state teams at this point. All right, welcome back, folks. Hopefully that last breakout session of the day was really productive, but just know that you'll have plenty of time to spend with your state training teams as the week goes on. So as we come to a close for day one, we wanted to just reiterate some of the goals that we had set for today. So I'm going to go ahead and just share some of them, and at the end, let me know. You can give a thumbs up, a virtual or a real thumbs up, if you feel like you've met this goal for today. So goal one, have a better understanding of the Bringing the Farm to School project and its materials. Goal two, have seen a panel in action and understand the purpose of a panel in local producer trainings. Goal three, have met new people from your region and gotten to know some old friends better. And then lastly, if you feel that you've met if you feel you met these goals, feel free to just share with a real thumbs up or a virtual thumbs up right now. Excellent, great, wonderful. Alrighty, well, for tomorrow, we'll be digging into the first half of the producer curriculum content, which are the introduction, modules 1 and 2, and then of course, spending some more time with your state breakout groups to work on action planning and a few other items as well. So thank you so much for spending the day with us. We'll see you all tomorrow.
Thanks, Thomas.
Thank you.
Take care now.